A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today we have to go back to verse number 104 of Surah Aale Imran, because last time we didn't get enough time to discuss it in detail. It starts like this. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. وَلْتَكُمْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ وَيَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. There must always be a group among you who calls towards goodness and instructs towards the morally commendable and forbids the evil. These are the people who will be successful. This is like a suggestion to the believers that you must always foster a group among yourselves which should be able to help the believers to be steadfast on their faith, and also that group takes the message to the unbelievers, conveys the message to the unbelievers. Of course, both these things are not easy, they are difficult. And the prerequisite for this is that this group of people should have enough knowledge so that they can teach the others. Now, calls here means there must be a group among you who calls towards goodness. Yad'una ilal khair. This can also does not mean that it forcefully takes you towards goodness, but it invites you towards goodness. According to Hazrat Ibn Abbas, that this Jama'ah would be inviting towards goodness and towards sulh. Sulh, that means to bring groups together if they have some differences. Instead of creating rifts between them, this good group will bring people together. And they will also teach about the oneness of God and prophethood, and they will, here when it says forbids the evil, they will be forbidding or telling people that kufr and shirk is forbidden. Kufr is denying God and shirk is to make partners with God. So all these things are not recommended. Now the problem here last time was with a hadith which I just quoted offhand without giving any references. But it does say, that hadith says that if you see something evil being done, stop it with force. And if you don't have that force, then you at least say something verbally, verbalize your disapproval. And if you can't even do that, there are moments when you can't do it, then you should at least think of that as being something wrong in your heart and mind. So this is to encourage people not to accept all the evil things. What happens is, like for example, giving and taking bribes. In some societies it has become so rampant that now people, if you tell them, what are you doing? You're taking a bribe, they will say, well, everybody does that. Since nobody's talking against it, people have started thinking that this is the norm and therefore everyone has a right to do it. Once I reprimanded my driver because he crossed a red light. And I said, what are you doing? Didn't you see the red light? He said, so what? Everybody's doing it. So what if I did it? So the thing is to consider something wrong to be wrong, to verbalize it, to try to stop it, try to tell people, teach people that this is something that is not acceptable. So is this point clear now about this hadith? For example, I would like to give this example of force. That supposing somebody has the power, example, an official, a food inspector. There are food inspectors in almost all the countries of the world. Now, if they are honest and they go and check that there's something wrong with the food, for example, if the meat of the dead animals is being served, if they find that out, or if haram food is being served in a Muslim country, then these food inspectors, if they are honest, they will catch the person who is doing this wrong deed. But if they are not honest, then they'll take a bribe and let it go. And that is how corruption becomes rampant. Similarly with judges. If judges start taking bribes, then there is no justice in that country. And also, besides this, all the important government posts which have people who have a decision-making power. So all these people should try to stop injustice to the weak and not to take bribes or other things from the rich and the powerful, and let this and just turn your face away from that crime. And these people also have to keep on telling people that the greatest truth in the universe, not just in this world, not just among the Muslims or the believers, but the greatest truth in the universe is monotheism, that the belief in the one God. And without that, nothing is acceptable. So I hope this clears the doubts of somebody who was, protesting against this point about the hadith. Now we move on to verse number 105. وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ تَفَرَّقُوا وَاخْتَلَفُوا مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَهُمُ الْبَيِّنَاتُ وَأُولَٰئِكَ لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ عَظِيمٌ. Another little example, sorry, I'm going back to verse number 104. For example, you can't always use force, and you can't even always verbalize what you think. So, for example, if you're in a foreign country, we visited Sri Lanka once. I went to a conference there, and in Colombo they took us to this very famous Buddhist temple. I've forgotten the name, Maligawa or something the name is. Anyway, though, it was famous for the fact that they have preserved, according to their belief, they say that they have preserved a tooth of the Buddha. So since the whole group was going, I had no objection. I went too, and we saw all these fancy statues, huge statues of the Buddha and whatnot. And then when we came to the final room in which the tooth was preserved, at that time I had already started covering my head. And when I started to walk, into that room, somebody stopped me. He said, "No, you can't go in with a covered head. You have to uncover your head." Now, according to my, whatever I was believing in at that time, I didn't want to uncover my head. So I did not start quarreling with them. I did not try to force or use any kind of strength in saying, "No, I'm right and you are wrong." I just said, "Okay," and I walked out, and I didn't, accompany the group into that room. So you have to judge according to the situation as to when you can use force. I had also given you this example of the man at the cabin who was selling huge, big cigar-like cigarettes to little children, very small children. And this is something I just could not tolerate, and I got down and I scolded him. So I don't know if I was able to stop him forever, but at least I did my part, and a lot of people gathered there, and they were all, sort of agreeing with me. Of course, they didn't come up with anything, but so at least if you can at least verbalize your opinion, you can see your thoughts, you can say this is wrong, then even if that person continues to do it for some time, maybe if not today, not tomorrow, maybe day after, he will think about it. See, these are translations, and a translation is a kind of even though it's a translation, people say that even a translation is an interpretation, because that is coming out of somebody else's mind. This is not the original word of God. So there can be little shades of differences, but on the whole they manage to convey the meaning. So what we are supposed to do is to invite towards goodness and to forbid the evil. Forbid doesn't necessarily mean that you go around with a stick and you force people, but you let them know that this is not something that is recommended. وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ تَفَرَّقُوا وَاخْتَلَفُوا مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَهُمُ الْبَيِّنَاتُ وَأُولَٰئِكَ لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ عَظِيمٌ. And do not become like those who became divided and disagreed after the clear signs had come to them. They are the ones for whom is a tremendous punishment. According to some, Muhammad Asad, I think, says that this means that the Bani Israelis and the Nasranis, the Jews and the Christians, had become divided into two groups. One group called themselves the Jews and the others are the Christians. Even though they had the same source, they were reading the Bible. And so here we are being instructed not to become like those who became divided and disagreed after the clear signs had come to them. Again, in a conference, I had an interfaith conference. I was sitting at the same table as with some other women of other religions, and one Christian and one Jewish woman, they were arguing with each other about the Bible. So you see, they don't agree about the Bible. Of course, one reason is that a lot of changes have been made over this period of time in the Bible. So they are the ones for whom is a tremendous punishment, azabun azim, a great punishment. So the people who have the same faith are supposed to keep united, because unity gives them strength. And if they are not united, then naturally they lose their strength, and sometimes they even become enemies of one another. And also some commentators say that even the followers of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam today are doing the same thing, because the Ummah has now, even though the Ummah has one God and one Prophet and one book, even though we all believe that the book has not been corrupted, the book has not been changed, even then, and they have one Qibla, they face in the same direction for their prayers, but still they have become divided into numerous sects on little minor points. On that day, some countenance, يَوْمَ تَبْيَضُّ وُجُوهٌ وَتَسْوَدُّ وُجُوهٌ فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ اسْوَدَّتْ وُجُوهُهُمْ أَكَفَرْتُمْ بَعْدَ إِيمَانِكُمْ فَذُوقُوا الْعَذَابَ بِمَا كُنْتُمْ تَكْفُرُونَ. On that day, some countenance will be lit up and others will be darkened. On what day? The day of judgment, the last day. The last sentence in the last verse says they are the ones for whom is a tremendous punishment. So punishment will be given on the last day, the day of punishment, it is also called. On that day, some countenance will be lit up and others will be darkened. So whose countenance will be lit up? Naturally, those who have believed. The light of their faith, it is said, will be visible on their faces. In fact, some hadiths etc. state that there will be a light on their foreheads. And the ones who are not given any light, those are the people whose faces will be, others will be darkened. That will be the darkness of kufr, of disbelief. And both these groups will be recognizable from a distance by their faces because of their light and their darkness. Once a young Buddhist professor who was very intelligent, she was a PhD and she was teaching in an important university in Bangkok. She also told me that in our religion, we say that on that day, some faces will be black and some will be white. So it means the same thing. Some will be lighted up and others will be darkened. Those whose faces are darkened will be told, "Did you deny after coming to believe? So now taste the punishment for your denial." So some people first came to believe and then for some reason they gave up their faith, and for that they will be punished. أَمَّا الَّذِينَ ابْيَضَّتْ وُجُوهُهُمْ فَفِي رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ هُمْ فِيهَا خَالِدُونَ. And those whose faces are lit up, they will be under the mercy of God, فِي رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ, and will stay in it forever. So whoever goes after the day of judgment, whoever goes to heaven will stay in heaven forever. They will never have to leave it. They will never be thrown out of heaven. And those who go to hell, even for them the Quran says, Khalidina fiha, they will live in it forever. But it is also said that sometimes people have the right faith, but they have done some very wrong things. So they will have to go to hell first. They will get their punishment first. And then when they are cleansed of that punishment, then they will be sent to heaven. تِلْكَ آيَاتُ اللَّهِ نَتْلُوهَا عَلَيْكَ بِالْحَقِّ وَمَا اللَّهُ يُرِيدُ ظُلْمًا لِلْعَالَمِينَ. These are the verses of God. تِلْكَ آيَاتُ اللَّهِ. We recite them to you with the truth. God is not unjust to the people of the worlds. So on the day of judgment, the reward and the punishment will be the result of that person's own deeds. Because God, here it is said, will not be unjust to the people. God will not, have any preferences or prejudices against people. He will judge according to what that person has committed, good or bad. In certain verses of the Quran, it says that even if you have done an atom's weight of good, then you will see it. You will see it means that you will be either rewarded for it or punished for it, good or bad, whatever you have done. So it is trying to say that the smallest possible good that you have done, you will be rewarded for it, and the smallest possible bad that you have done, that will also you will have to answer for. وَلِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَإِلَى اللَّهِ تُرْجَعُ الْأُمُورِ. To God belongs whatever is in the heavens and the earth, and all affairs will be referred back to God. According to some commentators, this verse, number 109, is a conclusion of many of the former verses that have just gone before, because it concludes by saying that God will be just, God is just, and He will not be unjust on the day of judgment. It will be the result of one's own deeds. Kuntum khaira ummatin ukhrijat linnasi ta'muruna bil ma'rufi wa tanhauna 'anil munkari wa tu'minuna billah. وَلَوْ آمَنَ أَهْلَ الْكِتَابِ لَكَانَ خَيْرًا لَهُمْ مِنْهُمُ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ وَأَكْثَرُهُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. Kuntum khaira ummatin, that means you are the best nation, raised for the good of mankind. Now here it does not say raised or brought up for the sake of the believers or the followers of the Prophet. No, it says ukhrajat linnas. Nas means all the people, the whole of mankind. And this word an-nas is used I don't know how many times in the Quran, which means that the Quran is meant not just for those who are already believers, but for the whole of mankind, all humanity. So you are the best nation raised for the good of mankind. So how is this nation raised for the good of mankind? Because the people who believe, they are supposed to firstly practice their faith, all the good things that they've been asked to do, and then to set an example by practicing their faith, so that other people can see what good your faith has done to you, and that this is really the right faith. There was a young boy, an American boy, who had accepted Islam, and he was so eager that his family, his parents and his sister should also accept Islam. And he used to just keep talking to them about it, and they used to just turn their faces away. So one day he was discussing this with me, and I said to him, just let them be and let them see what a good change this has brought about in you. Of course, the first change should be that anyone who is a Muslim should be really obedient, dutiful and respectful to his or her parents. So I hope he did that. You enjoin what is right and forbid what is wrong. What is right here is firstly, what is right is monotheism, and also belief in the Prophet ﷺ and all the prophets. And also what is wrong is, of course, polytheism and enmity to the Prophet, not believing in him, not respecting him. If the people of the book had believed, it would have been better for them. There are some among them who are believers, but most of them are transgressors. People of the book, who are the people of the book? In this case, of course, Christians are also the people of the book, but in this case it refers to the Bani Israelis, who were afraid that they would lose their superior identity if they started accepting an Arab prophet, and if they had to come to the prophet, to an Arab prophet to whom they used to look down upon. They used to look down on the Arabs, and it was the Arabs who were always coming to them for wisdom, coming to them to borrow money, because they were money lenders, and all the other things in which they had all these special crafts. So they considered them to be very superior people, special people. And that is why they did not, even though their books mentioned the Prophet, there were signs of the Prophet in their books, but they didn't want to accept him. If the people of the book had believed, it would have been better for them. There are some among them who are believers, most of them are transgressors, because some of them or many of them had accepted Islam, so they became believers. لَن يَضُرُّكُمْ إِلَّا أَذًى وَإِن يُقَاتِلُوكُمْ يُوَلُّوكُمُ الْأَدْبَارَ ثُمَّ لَا يُنْصَرُونَ. They will not be able to harm you except hurt you a little. That means even if the Bani Israelis, this is historical, if the Bani Israelis had all ganged up, then, and they did gang up, and in fact they even ganged up with the polytheists of Makkah against the Muslims, against the Prophet and the believers. So if they fight you, they will turn their backs and flee, and then they will not be helped. So first thing is that in spite of all the wealth and the arms and ammunition and the strength that the Bani Israelis had, they could not harm the Muslims. They were not able to harm the Muslims. Of course, except a little, they were, scheming with other groups and trying to harm them, but they were not really successful. And here when it says that they will turn their backs and flee, for this I would like to go back to this hadith, which maybe we'll read out one sometime. It's a longish hadith, that the Prophet ﷺ said that I have been given 6 things which no other prophet was given to give, which no other prophet was ever given. And one of the 6 things was robe. Robe means awe, A-W-E, awe. That means that just the appearance of this person makes you afraid. So whenever the Prophet or his believers went to fight with the other people, with their enemies, then these other people very often got scared, and so often they ran away. In the Battle of Badr they ran away. In the Battle of the Trench, Ghazwa Khandaq, they ran away, and so on. ضربت عليهم الذلة أينما سقفوا إلا بحبل من الله وحبل من الناس وباءوا بغضب من الله وضربت عليهم المسكنة ذلكم بأنهم كانوا يكفرون بآيات الله ويقتلون الأنبياء بغير حق ذلك بما عصوا وكانوا يعتدون. Dishonor will be their fate wherever they are found, except by a pact made with God and a pact made with people. Pact made with God is, if they were to accept Islam, then they would not be dishonored. And a pact made with people, that means that if they had some pact with some other nation which was behind them and helping them, then they might, be able to survive honorably. Or if they gave up the concept, they believed that they were the chosen people of God. No other nation had been so loved by God and had not been so blessed. And it is true that at one time they were the chosen people when they were receiving all the prophets. But then this position was taken away from them when they stopped believing in the true prophets and even started killing them without cause. They have earned the anger of God, and wretchedness is their fate. This is because they disbelieved the signs of God and killed the prophets without cause. They disobeyed and transgressed. Now here there are 2 words, Duribat alayhimu zillatu. Zillatu has been explained as when someone else makes a person inferior by some method, either by defeating them or taking away what they have, or whatever method has been used. If somebody else makes a person inferior, that is called zillat. And the other word that is here is maskana. Maskana is when people develop a low self-esteem. When they start feeling inferior themselves, then that is maskana. This has been explained by some scholars. Though maybe at other times it might be used in another sense, but here this is what it means. So they disobeyed and they transgressed. So you can see that constantly they are being mentioned in a negative way because they were being disrespectful to the prophets. They had already killed so many prophets, and they had planned to kill Prophet Isa alayhi salam, Hazrat Isa, which they were not successful in doing. There was one other point here. Sorry, I can't find that thing here now. Okay, if we find it, then here it is. Here the point in verse number 110, you are the best nation raised for the good of mankind. It has also been said that there is no limitation for the believer up to where he can take his goodness, raised for the good of the whole of mankind. In order to establish the truth and to spread guidance and to help in wiping out the darkness of misguidance, and in exposing falsehood and trying to make good deeds and good manners popular. They should also try to stop the exploitation of the poor. That is something that is done all the time in the world. Then another point here is that the teachings of all the other prophets were limited geographically, nation-wise, and also for in the manner of time. But for Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was a prophet for all the geographical places, all the nations, and forever. That means he was not limited by time and by space. Laysu sawa'an min alil kitabe ummatun qaimatun yatluna ayatillahi ana al-layli wa hum yasjudun. They are not alike. Again, this is continuing with the topic of the people of the book. They are not alike. Some among the people of the book are steadfast. They recite the verses of God during the night and they prostrate. They do sajda. According to Hazrat Ibn Abbas, when it is said some among the people of the book are steadfast, this refers to Abdullah bin Salam, the Jewish scholar who had accepted Islam, and he had become a very staunch Muslim, with Salwa bin Said and Asid bin Abd. All these were Jews who had also accepted Islam. But some are steadfast, but all of them are not alike. The others, Jewish scholars said that only the inferior among the people of the book, or inferior among the Bani Israelis, have accepted Islam. And the good amongst us have not left the religion of our forefathers. And when they were saying this, then this verse 113 was revealed. يُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَيَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ وَيُسَارِعُونَ فِي الْخَيْرَاتِ وَأُولَٰئِكَ مِنَ الصَّالِحِينَ. يُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ, they believe in God, وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ, and the last, and prescribe the good. So you see, if we read the Quran very attentively, we'll find that Yamaruna bil Maruf and Yanhona anil Munkar is repeated, innumerable times in the Quran, that they prescribe the good and forbid the wrong. Prescribe can also mean recommend, promote, teach. It does not mean that enforcing it by strength or by force. And forbid the wrong. Again, forbidding the wrong also means making it obvious, again, teaching that it is wrong, letting people know, letting people realize that this is not a good thing. And this is the reason why you will see that a lot of people keep going to these scholars and asking them, is it right to do such and such a thing? What should I do when I have done this, and after that what happens? People are always questioning their own beliefs or the details of it, and then they go and try and find out what is the perfect thing to do. So in this way, whoever is asking questions all the time is trying to perfect his faith. He's trying to improve his belief. So these good people they believe in God and the last day, and prescribe the good and forbid the wrong and hasten towards the good. That means they do not, when they know that this is something that is good, they do not dilly-dally. They just rush, and when they are convinced, then they rush towards the good. They are the people who are righteous. Ulaika minas salihin, they are the salihin. It also, some scholars have said, the question is that does this last verse that we have read, is it also referring to the people of the book? This is referring to the people of the book who have accepted Islam, and also some scholars have said that this is referring to Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq and his companions, because Hazrat Abu Bakr was always there for the Prophet whenever he needed him. He migrated with him, took his own, life, at a risk to his own life, he migrated with him, and everything that he did was with this 100% faith that whatever the Prophet is saying is correct. So these are the people who are righteous. This can also refer to Hazrat Abu Bakr and the companions at that time. وَمَا يَفْعَلُوا مِنْ خَيْرٍ فَلَنْ يَكْفُرُوهُ وَاللَّهُ عَلِيمٌ بِالْمُتَّقِينَ. And whatever good they do, it will not go unnoticed. God is always aware of the pious. Yakfuru is here it is translated as unnoticed, even though the word kufr comes from this, it's the same root, yakfuru. Kufr also means to deny, to erase, or to hide something. So in the same way, it is said here that whatever good they will do, it will not be hidden, it will not be denied, it will not be erased, it will stay there forever, and they will be rewarded for it. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَن تُغْنِيَ عَنْهُمْ أَمْوَالُهُمْ وَلَا أَوْلَادُهُمْ مِنَ اللَّهِ شَيْئًا وَأُولَٰئِكَ أَصْحَابُ النَّارِ هُمْ فِيهَا خَالِدُونَ. Indeed, those who deny, neither their wealth nor their children will save them from God in the least. These are the dwellers of the fire and will live in it forever. So, throughout human history, but very much so at that time, the two greatest sources of strength that people, the things that they considered to be the sources of strength was, of course, wealth and children. And children meant, of course, male, young, strong male men. So they thought that this gave them all the strength that they needed. But here it says that neither their wealth nor their children will save them from God in the least, because the young men were always there because they were always having these tribal warfares, so they needed some, and the warfare was not like they had no gunpowder, they had no dynamite, they had nothing of the kind, they were fighting individually. So the more children, male children you have, the more strong you become. For example, it reminds me of the brothers of Prophet Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam. There were 11 brothers, step-brothers, who were all grown up. And here was this young boy, Yusuf. But the father loved Yusuf a great deal because of his good qualities. And of course, one reason could be that he was a young boy at that time, and young children often love a little more. But the brothers were jealous of this little boy because they said, we are a strong band. And that means we are taking care of all the family affairs. We are protecting the family. We are providing for the family. How come our father loves us less than this little boy? So that was the cause of their jealousy. مَثَلُ يُنْفِقُونَ فِي هَذِهِ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا كَمَثَلِ رِيحٍ فِيهَا سِرٌّ أَصَابَتْ حَرْثَ قَوْمٍ ظَلَمُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ فَأَهْلَكَتْهُ وَمَا ظَلَمَهُمُ اللَّهُ وَلَكِنْ أَنفُسَهُمْ يَظْلِمُونَ. The semblance of those who spend, that means spend for pleasure, for showing off, for any other thing which will not gain them anything in the hereafter. So that is like wasting your money. Of course, it doesn't mean that you can't spend on yourself, but then there is a limit to that. So the semblance of those who spend for pleasure or other worldly reasons in this world is chilly winds which destroy the harvest of the people who transgressed against themselves. God was not unjust to them, but they did injustice to themselves. So here it is being said that when a person, wastes money, he becomes he just tries to show off how much money he has, and he wastes on all these worldly things, then it is as if his harvest has been destroyed by a chilly wind, and the harvest has been wasted. So their earning is completely lost. They had all this money, this wealth, and if they had used it in the cause of God, then they could have, in a way, preserved that, with God. Ya ayyuhallazina amanu la tattakhidhu bitanatan min dunikum la yalunakum khabala waddu ma anittum qad badatil baghdau min afwahim wa ma tukhfi suduruhum akbar qad bayyana lakumul ayati in kuntum taqilun. O you who believe, do not take for confidence people besides your own. They will not fail to harm you, for they are likely for they like that which harms you. Now when it is said, do not take for, some people might translate this as friends, but tanatan is the Arabic word here. It means close associates, confidants, even maybe close friends. So do not take those who are not of your own as your confidants. That means, it does not mean that you can't make friends with a non-believer. Yes, we can be very friendly with a non-believer, but if we are friendly with them to that extent that we are giving away all the secrets of the Muslims, to the extent that it becomes harmful for the believers and for the faith, then even for any particular believer, then this is something that we are forbidden to do. they will not fail to harm you, because if you give out your secrets, then they will harm you. For they like that which harms you. Indeed, their grudge has become apparent by their words, but what they conceal in their hearts is greater. So grudge is like, jealousy which is there, which is burning them all the time, because they cannot accept certain things, therefore they have this grudge in their hearts. Here it says they like that which harms you. Harm here has been explained as both physical harm and also mental harm. So they would like to harm you in every way. Indeed, their grudge has become apparent by their words. Even if they try to conceal their grudge, even if they are hypocrites, still by some way or the other they will expose themselves. What they conceal in their hearts is even greater. Without doubt, we have made clear to you the signs, if you would understand. So the Jews are constantly trying to create trouble among you. This is what is being said here. They want you to become like them. They would like you to return to your original faith or to become like them, so that they will not have to tolerate somebody who has become a group that has become superior to them. I came across this, it was a couplet from a poem by Sheikh Sadi. Of course, I don't know any Farsi, but I just came across the translation, and it says, "There is only one cure for the one who is jealous, that he should burn in the fire of his jealousy and turn into ashes." That means there is no cure for somebody who is jealous of somebody else. So this is what Sheikh Saadi has said in this connection. Ha antum ulai tuhibbunahum wa la tuhibbunakum wa tu'minuna bil kitabi kullihi wa iza laqukum qalu amanna wa iza khalu addu alaykum al anamila min al ghayz qul mutu bi ghayzikum inna allaha alimun bi zati sudur. Listen, you are those who love them, but they do not love you, even though you believe in all the books. The Muslims or the believers have a cleaner heart regarding the non-believers, especially the people of the book, because they believe in all their books and in all their prophets. That is one reason. And they are not jealous of them. They might be jealous in other ways, materially or otherwise, but here we are talking about the faith. So when they meet you, they say, we believe. This is about the hypocrites, that they say we have come to faith and we believe. But when they are alone, in their anger at you, they bite their fingers. Say, die in the fire of your own anger. Indeed, God is aware of the secrets of the hearts. So here, die in the fire of your own anger is the same thing as what Sheikh Saadi has expressed in his couplet. In tamsaskum hasanatun tasuhum wa in tusibkum sayyatun yafrahu biha wa in tasbiru wa tattaqu la yadurrukum kaiduhum shay'a inna allaha bima ya'maluna muhit. If some good comes your way, they are annoyed by it, and if harm comes your way, they rejoice at it. But if you are patient and only fear God, their scheming will not harm you at all. Indeed, God has laid siege to whatever they do. If you are patient, that means you should behave with sabr and only fear God. If you are muttaqi, that means the only power that you are afraid of is the power of God. Like it is said that a young boy asked his father, how can I stop becoming afraid? How can I become brave? And the father said, by being afraid. So he said, how's that? And the father said, by being afraid of God. If you are afraid of God, then you are not afraid of anything else, because you have this firm faith that you are on the right and that God will protect you. So this is what is being said here. If you are patient and only fear God, their scheming will not harm you at all. Maybe, as it has been said earlier, they might hurt you a little, but it will not harm you. وَإِذْ غَدَوْتَ مِنْ أَهْلِكَ تُبَوِّئُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ مَقَاعِدَ لِلْقِتَالِ اللَّهُ سَمِيعٌ عَلِيمٌ. When you took leave of your families in the morning and were placing the believers in their battle positions, God knew everything, for He is the ever-hearing, the ever-knowing. This is referring to the Battle of Uhud. This is one battle in which the Muslims were not so steadfast. Some of them, the Mujahideen who had gone, was some of them, became a little bit greedy, and they thought that they had almost won the war, or they thought they had won the war, and they left the positions on which the Prophet had asked them to stay and had told them not to leave these positions in any case. But they did. They thought that since the enemy has now left, we can now go and capture all the spoils of war, all the stuff that the enemy has left behind. So in this war, it is not said that, they say it was like a, what do you say in cricket, when both the teams are equal? A draw. They say that this battle was a draw, because first the Muslims won, and then Khalid bin Walid was at that time with the people of Makkah. He had not accepted Islam at the time. He accepted Islam after this Battle of Uhud. He noticed that the Muslims had left their battle positions. So what he did was, he went around and came back and attacked them from the back. He took a big circle along with his followers, and he attacked the Muslims from the back, and the Muslims were routed. And in this war, 70 Sahaba became martyrs. They died, they became shaheeds, including Hazrat Hamza. Even though, many of them were steadfast, but since this attack was coming from behind, many died. And at that time, Aus and Khazraj, the two groups, they also had started losing courage, but God saved them. So this was one war in which, since the Muslims made this mistake, they became greedy. They did not win the war, but mostly I think they did win the war. Sometimes the enemy did not come out to fight them. Even though it was rumored that they were preparing for war, they did not come out to fight them. When two groups from among you started to lose courage, sorry, I should read the ayah. Is hammat ta'ifatani minkum an tafshala wallahu waliyuma wa 'ala Allahi falyatawakkalil mu'minun. When two groups from among you started to lose courage, God was their protecting friend. Only in God should the believers place their trust. Tawakkul is like the full 100% trust that what you are doing it in the name of God, therefore you are right, and no matter what happens, you will not lose courage. And according to Hazrat Ibn Abbas, the procurement of all the necessary equipment and all the requirements for such an event is also called tawakkul. وَلَقَدْ نَصَرَكُمْ. This mention of the two groups is about these two tribes, the Aus and Khazraj. When they heard that more ammunition, etc., was coming from Makkah to help them, then they lost even more courage. But then God gave them their courage back again. وَلَقَدْ نَصَرَكُمُ اللَّهُ بِبَدْرٍ وَأَنْتُمْ أَذِلَّةٌ فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ. God had helped you at the Battle of Badr when you were weak. Be fearfully conscious of God so that you might become grateful. In the Battle of Badr, it had so happened that the believers were only 1,000 in the beginning, and the others were, I think, 3,000. And when the leader of the hypocrites, Abdullah bin Ubay, when he realized that he said the Muslims are very few in number, they are going to lose and we are going to get killed. So at the last minute, he and his 300 followers left the camp, which means that there were less than 1,000 believers with about 3 to 4 times their number in the enemy. But even then, they routed the enemy. When you were weak, God says, we helped you. And it is said that Prophet Muhammad was praying at that time that if this small group of believers is killed, no one will remain on earth to worship you. He was saying this to God, that means that there was no monotheism in the whole world at that time. Only the small band of people were fighting for God. Istaqulu lil mu'minina alan yakfiyakum an yumiddakum rabbukum bisalasati alafim min malaikati munzalin. You were saying to the believers, is it not enough for you that your God helped you with 3,000 angels sent down? So it is also said that in the battle of Badr, since they were following on all the instructions, they were fighting with a strong faith, therefore God helped them with 3,000 angels. According to some, the angels actually fought in the battle, while others think that because of their presence, the believers felt stronger and they became very steadfast and they fought it out. Now, they had also received news at Badr that a certain mushrik, Kurz bin Maharbi, was sending support to the mushrikeen from Makkah. But when news reached him of the defeat of the Makkans, he did not send them any support. And when the support didn't come, then the promise of God that he would send them 5,000 angels, also those angels did not need to come, which is mentioned in the next verse. Bala in tasbiru wa tattaqu wa yatukum min fawrihim haza yumditkum rabbukum bi khamsati alafim min malaikati musawwimin. That means, yes, indeed, if you are patiently steadfast and God-fearing, and if they come at you suddenly, your Lord will help you with 5,000 angels who are marked for battle. But these 5,000 angels did not need to come. وَمَا جَعَلَ اللَّهُ إِلَّا بُشْرَى لَكُمْ وَلِتَطْمَئِنَّ قُلُوبُكُمْ بِهِ وَمَا النَّصْرُ إِلَّا مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ الْعَزِيمِ الْحَكِيمِ. And God did not make this except as good news for you, and so that your hearts might be at peace by it. Help does not come except from God, the Almighty, the Wise. Help does not come except from God means no matter what we say, we win a cricket match and we say, oh, see how well we've done, and we start jumping and celebrating. Or if some people go to war and if they win, again the same thing happens. But here it is being said that help does not come except from God. That means the real cause for the success or the cause behind the success is God. But it does not mean that you can just go to sleep and say it comes from God, so He's going to give me success. No, we have to try our best and then leave it to God in no matter what we are doing. لِيَقْطَعَ طَرْفًا مِنَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا وَيَكْبِتَهُمْ فَيَنْقَلِبُوا خَائِبِينَ. So as to cut off a section of the unbelievers or humiliate them so that they may turn back unsuccessful. لَيْسَ لَكَ مِنَ الْأَمْرِ شَيْءٌ أَوْ يَتُوبَ عَلَيْهِمْ أَوْ يُعَذِّبَهُمْ فَإِنَّهُمْ ظَالِمُونَ. You have no share in this decision. He can either relent or punish them. They are indeed transgressors. Now, what is this decision and who has no share? According to Qurtubi, the Prophet ﷺ wanted to curse the people who had wounded their Prophet. This is again referring to the Battle of Uhud, in which the Prophet's tooth was broken, front teeth were broken, and also his cheek was cut. He was wounded. And in one account I've read that he even fell down. So even some of the Muslims started believing that the Prophet had been killed. And some, of course, the non-Muslims did think that he had been killed, so they felt very victorious. But this just reminds me of this female, Ammara was her title. The Prophet said about this very incident when he had been wounded, he said, to my right and to my left, whichever way I looked, I saw Ammara defending me. So not only are women not banned from taking part in a war, they are sort of protected. They're not supposed to expose themselves to all this hardship. And also you find in some hadiths, you read that they would go into the battlefield to serve water to the wounded, and some of them women were so strong that they would even lift the men up, the wounded men, and take them to a safe place. So, but coming back to this ayat, yes, I just said that Ammara was fighting there with a sword. Of course, many of the Prophet's very staunch Sahaba were around him, but she was also one of them, and the Prophet himself said that to my right and to my left, whichever way I looked, I found Ammara defending me. and she also took part in several other battles. So what I was referring to here is this: who has no share in this decision, and he can either relent or punish them. They are indeed transgressors. According to Qurtubi, the Prophet ﷺ wanted to curse the people who had wounded their Prophet and broken his teeth, simply because what was his fault? Only that he was calling them to the one God. And the Prophet was trying to take permission from God in order to curse them. But at that point, this verse was revealed, and the Prophet realized that he was being asked not to curse them. Why? Because he realized that many of these people will accept Islam later. And one example we have just mentioned, and that is of Hazrat Khalid bin Walid, who was a very courageous fighter. وَلِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ يَغْفِرُ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ وَيُعَذِّبُ مَنْ يَشَاءُ وَاللَّهُ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. To God belongs whatever is in the heavens and the earth. He may forgive whomever He please and punish whomever He please, for God is the much forgiving, the ever merciful. So even somebody like Khalid bin Walid, who had killed so many Muslims, who had opposed the Prophet for years, he became one of the prominent Sahaba, one of the prominent companions of the Prophet. So that means Tawbah is something for which the door is always open. And as we have discussed earlier, as long as the Tawbah is done before we see death, before we see the angel of death, then it is acceptable. So I hope there are no unanswered questions. Since the time is up, we can now do a little bit of dua. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina Muhammadin nabiyil ummi wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa barik wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina Muhammadin nabiyil ummi wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa barik wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina Muhammadin nabiyil ummi wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa barik wa sallim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanatan wa fil akhirati hasanatan wa qina azaban nar wa adkhilna al jannata ma'al abrar ya azizu ya ghaffar ya rabbil alamin bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Ameen summa ameen. So I'm sure everybody here knows the meaning of this dua, which is in the Quran. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanatan, O our Lord, give us the best in this world. Wa fil akhirati hasanatan, and the best in the hereafter. Wa qina azaban nar, and save us from the punishment of the fire. An-nar means hell. Nar means fire, but when you add the al, it becomes definite article al, then it means hell. So save us from the fire of hell. Ameen summa ameen. Thank you all for joining us today, and I hope all of us and more people will also join next time. Inshallah, see you again, inshallah, next week. Jazakallah khair. Allah Hafiz.